Good to meet you. So Ben Nelson from Minerva, I think, queued you up quite nicely there. I don't know if you got to hear his comments, but basically they were about how when you can deliver high-value courses for free, it's going to force a lot of change in the world. How do you see that unfolding?
Well, everything if you'd asked me the same question last year as to how do you see it unfolding, and if I had predicted a few things, everything would have been wrong.
Okay.
But what is amazing is that over the past, I just look back to the last year when we launched our first course on edX, and our focus was to really focus on high quality. There have been a lot of online courses. Online learning has been around for a long time. And people generally did not have a good experience until last year. If you talk to people, how do you like online learning? How do you like taking these, online learning used to be videos and multiple choice. It's like the bottom of the pit. And if you gave people more of that, it was just not worth doing. So our focus at edX was high quality. We wanted to bring in, how to bring a lab experience through virtual simulations. How do you build discussion forums where students would work with each other, help each other, where you could involve community TAs. How could you bring in textbooks? So really create a much more engaged experience online, and that's what we did with the first course. And I think this is, it has a very strong potential to really disrupt university education at the same time. And quality is the key. If there are still videos and multiple choice, it would not help universities. Our major focus at edX was not only to increase access to education for students around the world, but also bring in high-quality education into campuses, and where you could create a blended model of learning where students could watch videos and do interactive labs, and then in class they could interact with a professor. So the way we are seeing it unfold is that in the first phase, we increased access. In our very first course, we had 155,000 students from 162 countries take the course. 10,000 students registered in the first hour that we posted the course online in January of last year from MIT on edX. The second phase is where we're saying, let's bring this back on campus to improve campus education quality through a blended model where you combine both online and in person. So the way it's unfolding is both increasing access, then also bringing in high-quality learning back to campus.
Okay. One question that we were discussing is kind of the role of media organizations in education. And you're talking about the real differentiator of edX from other online education providers being quality, right?
Yes.
So what do you think you can learn from media organizations, entertainment organizations, that you hope to bring into edX to drive quality? And what do you think they could learn from you in terms of genuine focus on learning and learning outcomes?
So I think the connection to media is really how do you bring in technology. So if you looked at media, whether it's news media or if you look at just how online news was done 30, 40 years ago, I remember as a youngster, black and white TV, there was a talking head, and that was news. If you look at news today on CNN or Al Jazeera or any of these news outlets, it's totally different. It's a immersive experience. It's like you're there. And I think with online learning, that's something we can learn from the media. We need to apply technology in a very positive way to learning. So it started out, and again, when people didn't like online learning in the past, it was a talking head. If you could look at a talking head in a theater, that's one thing. But then staring at a talking head on camera is much worse. So what we're doing in online learning today, and I encourage you to go to edx.org, edx.org. There's a demo course on there. This is not your grandfather's online course. I mean, this is highly interactive. It is exciting. There's online labs, a lot of game-like experiences. We can go in and begin building things with game-like facility. There's video, there's interaction, there's sketching, there's discussion forums where you discuss You may be discussing with somebody from Pakistan, while at the same time someone pops in from Colombia. So it's a very social, very game-like collaborative experience. And I think this is where we can really think about how media has evolved from the talking head to the modern news approach. And I think that's what we can do with online learning as well.
One of the things that we discussed is how the kind of like tyranny of the course model and how we haven't really moved beyond the course model in online learning in general. And I don't expect edX to be innovating past that right now, but one place I think you would be innovating is really in conversation and participation. And how do we rethink forums? Because frankly, there's been a tyranny of forums too. We haven't been able to think outside the forum, right? As a way to get mass participation. Where do you see conversation going, and what are you guys doing at edX to really innovate on mass participation and conversation?
So first of all, I do want to point out that we've gone quite a bit away from kind of the traditional course. In a traditional course, students go in, and even in a traditional online course, you would go in and you would sit and watch an hour-long lecture. And that is boring. At the end of the week, you would get some homeworks. What we do today is we move past the lecture to what we call learning sequences and active learning, where we interleave short videos, 5-10-minute videos, with interactive exercises and interactive laboratories. So you do a video, and then you do a lab. You have homeworks online. And what you're finding from students is that they're finding their own pathways through the course. Traditionally, we are used to watching a lecture a couple times a week, and then we do a homework at the end of the week. But here, because students have the option of multiple pathways, we give them homeworks, we give them labs, we give them textbooks, we give them videos and interactive exercises. They find their own pathways. In the circuits course, for example, we looked at the data. It turned out that 75% of the students started watching videos first, and 25% of the students were doing homeworks first. But then by the time the course proceeded to the end, 65% of the students were attacking the homework first. And then they would go and get materials from textbooks or labs and get the content as they needed. So they completely switched around and found their own pathways. So the courses are becoming untraditional. In terms of discussion forums, things are moving way past having this one big forum where you have a gaggle of students, 150,000 students all talking to each other. I'll give you two examples. One is, so we took a lesson from colleges like Wellesley College and others. They told us that they really wanted to bring back the small group feel into discussion forums. So at edX, we introduced what is called cohorts. So with cohorts, the instructor can take a large discussion forum and break it up into many small cohorts or small groups so that each student finds themselves in a small forum. So for example, in the Greek history course by Professor Naj from Harvard, he divided the course into 60,000 students into 60 cohorts with merely 1,000 students per cohort. Now, it turns out that not all students are active, and so each cohort, each discussion group may have tends to maybe 100 students on the forum active at any time. So I think that's one way in which we are trying to move forums. A second way in which we're trying to move forums is trying to create more of a concept of mentoring and tutoring. And so we have a way of anointing certain students who are doing really well as what we call CTAs, community teaching assistants, or community TAs. And so and oftentimes students who do well one semester can be invited to serve as a community TA in a following semester. So we're trying to create more of, rather than a pure peer-to-peer approach, try to create a peer-to-peer, but with some moderation as part of it. So that's the second thing that we're trying out.
It's great, very exciting. You did just mention finding something surprising in the data about how students use edX. And this is one place where education is far behind media in using data to kind of inform further business decisions, further product decisions. But at the same time, education, I believe, could reveal a much richer data set. And I think edX is one of the few organizations that has the ability to drive that vision forward. Can you talk about your vision for using data science to kind of transform how people interact with learning, and what kind of the media organizations might be able to learn from your vision?
So the data is fantastic. I salivate when I think of the possible things we can do with all this extraordinary data. In fact, I like to call edX the particle accelerator for learning. So just imagine, so you're teaching a course, and in a normal class you have 30 students, maybe 50 students, 90% of them asleep. They have no idea what they're doing. You have no idea when they do the homeworks, how much time they spend on the homeworks, are they even coming to class? And then if you want to do any surveys, we have to ask them qualitatively, how much time did you spend on this? Was this hard? Was this easy? We have very little knowledge. We have few students, and we have little accurate knowledge. Now imagine a MOOC. So as an example, let's say one of our edX classes has 150,000 students. So just imagine you have 150,000 students taking the course, and it's all online. All the activity is online. There is no qualitative stuff anymore. It's all online. So we track every single mouse click. We know when they're watching, at what time they're watching, when did they stop watching. If they tried an exercise or a homework, what were the sequences of answers they gave? What was right? What was wrong? What was the resource they last looked at before they got a right answer? Who did they talk to? Did they have a discussion before they got the right answer? What related to a good answer? So the data is extraordinary. So as an example, with this 150,000 person class I talked about, the circuits course on edX, we gathered 230 million records of data. And if you go to edX, you can see many of the research papers on the research and pedagogy page under the About section. And I'll give you one example of some really, really cool data. So what do you think? Does homework correlate with success? So we have homeworks. And I have a teenage son. He's a sophomore in the second year of college. And he always said, what's the point of homework? Why do homework? Just do the exams, study for exams, and you're done. Why do the homework? So we did a study. We took all this data, and we plotted the amount of time people spent on homework with their overall score in the course. Now, we can track how much time you spend on homeworks. When was the last time you could do that? You couldn't do that before. The best you could do previously was ask a student, how much time did you spend on homework? I have no idea. Is it hours? And people guess. If the homework was hard, they guess a lot longer. It's completely subjective. But now, we have 150,000 students. We know how much time they're spending on the homework. And so we plotted a graph. And for every student, we put a data point. And this was a study that Lori Breslau and Andrew Ho from MIT and Harvard did. And they found that when they plotted all the data, they found a very positive correlation between the amount students spent on homework to the overall success in the course. Simple. So why don't we show this data to every student taking any course in the future and say, look, studies have shown that the amount of time you spend on homeworks has positively correlated with the overall score of other students. This is just one example of the kind of data mining that we've been able to do. And with edX, we share all our data with all our university partners. And so the future is very exciting as we begin to learn about learning.
Well, I have a million more questions I would like to ask you, but my mother reminds me that I should share. So maybe we should share the time we have with the audience and see if there are any remaining questions.
Hi, I'm Nick Kind. I feel a little strange as I work for a media company which is intensely involved in education. We are the holding company for Macmillan, amongst others. There's a picture, I think, being painted here of kind of two extremities. We've got big media companies creating reusable content and a lot of data. And yet at the other end, we've got a view that to create the best educational experience, you need small seminars of people experiencing a social experience. Where do you think the person really has to intervene in the educational process? And how do you see that changing over time?
You mean where does the person integrate?
Where the teacher gets involved.
So first of all, with all of these courses, no matter how much technology you bring into it, the number one feature we found that correlates to course quality is the passion of the teacher creating the course. So whether you have, we've looked at how students react to recordings with a pretty crappy webcam versus high def, high quality studio recording of a professor. It turns out that if you were to ask me, I would say 70 to 80% of the perceived quality is in the expression and the passion of the professor. And I would say maybe 30% of it is in the technology or the media or the video quality behind the production. I would say that for news media, I suspect that is less so. I mean, clearly, if I were listening to a media star versus someone who's not a media star, I think it would make some difference. But I think from an education point of view, the teacher makes a much bigger difference. How they explain things, the passion that comes through. So all the course content is created by a teacher. It's not produced magically by some content producer sitting in the back room creating content. No, this is a teacher talking to the students. So that's really important. The second part, so in MOOCs, that's how it is done. And the students also like it when the teacher is engaged with the students on the discussion forums and so on. I remember when I was engaged in the discussion forum, I used AA as my moniker. And I responded to something. There was a policy question about, do these grades count? And I responded to it. And many students hadn't even realized that I was participating. So what we did was that we added a field indicating an instructor response because students really care about that. And then finally, we create blended classes on campus where what we're finding is that the success of students is simply much higher when there's a teacher on campus. I'll give you a quick result. At San Jose State University, for instance, for MOOCs, you hear pass rates of 7%. On edX, it's about 7% compared to the number of students that register. But when we taught the same course at San Jose State University in California with a teacher augmenting the online course, helping the students, the pass rate was 91%. So it's dramatically better when students can interact with the teacher and get help from a teacher.
We have time for one more question.
There's one here.
So,
I've actually been on your site. It's quite impressive. I'm shocked that you're a nonprofit organization, right? You're a non-for-profit. How are you funding these massive operations and bandwidth costs and all administrative management especially as you continue to expand?
So first of all, I'm shocked that you're shocked that that a nonprofit is doing education. edX. So to be clear, edX is a nonprofit, and we've also made a platform. There's another thing to be shocked about. Our courses are free, but we've also made a software platform free. And you may have heard the news that France has adopted Open edX for the national infrastructure, and so has China. We've given away the platform for free as well. So there's more things to be shocked about. But we certainly felt very strongly that education is our cause. It needs to be done by a for-profit, therefore we are a for-profit. But to your question, how do you support it? There are huge nonprofits doing extraordinary good in the world without a profit motive. Now we do want to be self-sustaining. So initial investment has come from MIT and Harvard. They've each invested $30 million in the platform, and that's $60 million. And many of our university partners, and we have partner universities from some of the best universities in the world, like Tsinghua from China, IIT Bombay, Australia National University from Australia, MIT, Harvard, Berkeley, and so on. Many of them have also contributed dollars to our effort. But over time, we have many ways in which we are experimenting to become more self-sustaining. One approach is that we charge for identity verified certificates. We charge a small fee. The courses are free. You can get an honor code certificate for free, but you want a verified cert, you pay a small fee. And we also, the nation of France, for example, as they adopt our platform to offer courses, they've approached us to say, look, can we get support from you for the open source? So it's like what Red Hat is to Linux. edX could be to our open source platform called Open edX. So Red Hat to Linux could be edX to Open edX. And so that is another way in which we are thinking of generating a revenue stream to become self-sustaining.
Right. Well, thank you. We are out of time. So have fun at the reception.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anant.
Thank you.